Hey guys, LevelCap here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the G36C carbine for the Engineer class. Now the gun looks very similar to the MG36 because it's made by the same people, and it is essentially the same gun body, just different stock and barrel. Now the gun is actually kind of short, and it's been reclassified as a carbine for Battlefield 3, whereas if any of you guys remember Bad Company 2, the G36C was actually a pretty good assault rifle for the assault class. But now it has been reclassified as a carbine, and I think the reason for this is that the gun is kind of short. It doesn't have as long of a barrel as some of the assault rifles there, so they decided to make it more of a close quarters weapon that would be more favorable to a class like the Engineer. Now you'll see here that I am using the foregrip on this weapon. I made a foregrip guide a while ago that was talking about how the G36C made some of the best use of the foregrip. Since then, the G36C has actually had its side-to-side recoil reduced, and now I would say the foregrip is really more of an aesthetic choice because the differences that you gain from reducing the side-to-side recoil are kind of balanced out with the accuracy that you lose with your aiming down sights. So depending on how you want to use this weapon, you could decide to use a foregrip, say if you're going more for a hipfire route, but if you're going to be using it for mostly aiming down the sights, I'd say you don't even need to bother with it anymore. One of the great features about the G36C is that it actually ties the M4A1 and AKS in reload speed if you still have a bullet left in the chamber, clocking in at 1.9 seconds. So that's a very likable reload speed, especially if you are going to be using it in close quarter situations, which is where this gun really needs to be used. And that's going to just allow you to get your bullets back in the gun faster and reload faster. It's high-end reload time, meaning if you've used all your ammunition in the gun, is 2.85 seconds, which is a little bit higher than the M4A1, but a little bit less than the AKS. So it kind of finds a nice balance in some of the fastest reloading carbines. Now on paper, this gun's actually pretty impressive. It really does come quite close to being equal to the M4A1 in a lot of ways with its stats. And just looking at all the weapon stats, it's got a nice fast bullet velocity of around 500 meters per second. Not making it the fastest, but it certainly beats out most of the carbines available. So you can still have a nice fast bullet speed for hitting targets at long ranges. The recoil doesn't seem too intense. In fact, it seems kind of average across all boards in terms of vertical and left to right. In fact, the vertical recoil is identical to the left to right recoil, which is 3.3 in all departments. Now at first you think, oh, that's nice, it'll give me a nice even spread in each direction. Well, after using this weapon for a while, I was actually having a hard time getting very accurate shots at long ranges. I'm not saying I couldn't hit guys. In fact, I was doing fine with the weapon, but comparing it to some of the other carbines that I enjoy using, I was having kind of a tough time keeping this gun on target at decent ranges. And I think part of the problem with that is that the left and right pull are identical. Now you might think, well, isn't that what you want with a weapon? Well, that's what I would have thought as well, but once you have an identical left and right pull, it can actually be a little bit harder to gauge the recoil. Now if you compare it to something like the M4A1, which has a left pull of 0.1 and a right pull of 0.3, I can pretty much predict where the gun is going to recoil to. It's going to be much more to the right, and I can adjust for that with my mouse. But with the G36C, I can't really predict which direction the gun is going to buck to. Is it going to buck to the left? Is it going to buck to the right? It's going to buck to both, and it becomes much more difficult to control side-to-side recoil. And I'm not saying it's extremely hard to use this gun or extremely hard to aim and hit targets, but it can be a little bit tricky, especially for the players who really do like to micromanage and control their recoil. Now, if you're somebody who doesn't actually like to bother with recoil control, then the G36C could actually be a pretty decent weapon for you, since the left to right recoil is going to eventually even out, and you won't have to do much messing around with your mouse or analog sticks. Now, the G36C fires at a good solid 750 rounds per minute, which is only 50 rounds per minute slower than the M4A1. It's quite a bit slower than the MTAR, which has a 900 rounds per minute rate of fire. It's a bit faster than the SG553, which clocks in at 700, but there's just something about the 750 rounds per minute rate of fire that can feel very lacking at medium to longer ranges, since the carbines aren't the highest damaging weapons. In fact, they're kind of low, especially at longer ranges with their minimum damage of 14.3. The slightly low rate of fire can actually be quite aggravating trying to take down moving targets at range. Combine that with the inability to micromanage that recoil, and it's going to be a bit more frustrating than you initially thought to take down moving targets. Even stationary targets at range can be kind of a pain in the butt, and especially targets that are taking advantage of head glitching. And if you don't know what I mean when I say head glitching, I'm basically referring to somebody who's behind a piece of cover that is almost at the exact level of their player model, so you can only barely see the very, very top of their head, which makes it not only a very hard target to hit, but it also, on their end, it gives them a full range of view. So they basically get to see a big, wide range of view and fire at you freely, while you only get to see like the top third of their head or the top quarter of their head. With most guns, if you've got a good enough shot, you can still take them out pretty fast. You know, you just aim for the head, you fire off and get a few headshots. With this gun, I found it very hard to take out head glitchers. In fact, there's many situations where if there's a head glitch or somebody behind a piece of cover that just had that kind of advantage on me, I literally just had to turn and run, give up any chance of being able to put 1 or 2 headshots into them at a range. It was just going to be near impossible. So the inaccuracy of this weapon at longer ranges can be especially frustrating when you're up against players who really know how to take advantage of the environment around them. Now, as for recommended attachments, I always like to run heavy barrels on carbines because not only do they make your shots more accurate, but carbines actually benefit, pretty much all carbines, I believe, benefit from increased bullet velocity if you put a heavy barrel on the weapon. So I think just about all carbines, you really need to put a heavy barrel on there to take full advantage of them. Now, as for foregrip, I know I'm using one in this video here, but upon further investigation and looking into the stats, going on to simthic.com, this weapon, since its recent reduction, just doesn't fire more accurately with a foregrip on it. It's a very, very minute change, but I would say just forego the foregrip and just run with this thing with a heavy barrel, a Cobra sight, and or a red dot sight. Now, normally, if I'm not loving a gun, or if it's not my favorite thing, or if I think it always gets beat out by another gun in the same class in like every area, I'll say something like along the lines of where I think DICE could improve the weapon, whether it's like improving reload time or magazine capacity, or whatever be the case. I usually have some ideas on how to improve the gun. But even though I'm not the biggest fan of the G36C, I don't think it actually needs to be improved by DICE. I think it actually serves its purpose perfectly. And that purpose is being a well-balanced gun that a player who doesn't really want to spend too much time micromanaging recoil can actually use and still be fairly effective with. Now, you can be more effective if you spend more time managing or mastering the recoil of the M4A1 or other guns out there. But the G36C is a gun that you can pick up and not really need to know much about recoil management and still do pretty darn well with. So does this make the G36C a noob or a novice weapon? Not really. It's just a gun that's very easy to get into. It can be very powerful right off the bat, but it just doesn't provide that depth of management or accuracy that you can get with some of the other guns that if you just give them a little bit more time and love, you can actually really master them. The G36C doesn't go much beyond the basic point and shoot skill level because there isn't really any need for high-end recoil management with this weapon. So overall, the G36C is easy to use and effective, but doesn't provide the accuracy that perhaps a very skilled or veteran player might require from their carbine weapons. So I like it. It serves a very good purpose in this game, but I probably won't be using it very much. I hope you guys enjoyed the weapon review. If you did, please rate up the video, and I'll see you guys next time. This is LevelCap, signing off.